On August 15th, 2005, a strange anomaly appeared on the naval tracking systems off the coast of Florida. Lieutenant Commander Richard Morgan was the first to notice the unusual readings while monitoring routine submarine movements in the area. The blip was approximately 10 miles east of Key West, deep in an underwater trench that had never been properly explored due to its unusual magnetic properties. Most equipment simply malfunctioned when approaching the area. What initially appeared to be a submarine malfunction quickly became something much more concerning. "Admiral Fletcher, we've got something weird here," Richard called out, his eyes never leaving the pulsing green dot on his screen. "It's big, too big to be one of ours, and it's not moving like any craft I've ever tracked." Admiral Theodore Fletcher ambled over, coffee mug in hand, his salt and pepper eyebrows furrowing as he leaned in to study the monitor. "Russian? Chinese, maybe?" "No, sir. It's not registering any known propulsion signature, and it's just sitting there, about 900 feet down. Wreckage from a cargo ship, perhaps." Richard shook his head. "No recent reports of missing vessels, and this thing is giving off energy readings. Faint, but definitely there." Admiral Fletcher took a long sip of his coffee, his weathered face revealing nothing. "Send a reconnaissance team. Keep it quiet." By August 17th, the Navy had dispatched a small, unmarked vessel with a team of 5 specialists. The mission was classified, even within most naval circles. Leading the team was Commander Abigail Winters, a veteran of unusual maritime situations and one of the few people Admiral Fletcher trusted implicitly. "Keep radio contact at all times," he had instructed her. "The minute anything seems off, you pull out. We don't need heroes. We need information." The small research vessel arrived at the coordinates at precisely 0700 hours. The sea was unusually calm, glassy even, which several crew members remarked was strange given the normally turbulent waters in that region. "It's like something's dampening the waves," observed Lieutenant Marcus Sandoval, the team's sonar specialist. His dark eyes narrowed as he studied his equipment. "And there's something else. My instruments are working perfectly. They shouldn't be." Abigail looked over his shoulder. "Explain." "This area is notorious for equipment failure, some kind of electromagnetic anomaly that nobody's been able to explain. That's why it's never been properly mapped, but everything's functioning at 100% efficiency." The team deployed their most advanced underwater drone, a prototype that could reach depths of 1,500 feet while transmitting high-definition video and sonar readings in real time. As the drone descended, the water gradually darkened until the powerful LED lights cut through the gloom like laser beams. 900 feet, announced Marcus. "We should be approaching the Anomaly now." The video feed suddenly flickered, the image distorting momentarily before stabilizing, and then they saw it. "Holy Mother of God," whispered Abigail. The drone's lights illuminated what was unmistakably not a submarine or a shipwreck, but something entirely different. A massive triangular structure, its surface covered in what appeared to be a combination of marine growth and some kind of metallic material that still gleamed despite years, perhaps decades, underwater. The object was enormous, at least 300 feet across at its widest point. "That's not one of ours," Marcus stated unnecessarily. "And it's not Russian or Chinese either." "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Abigail asked quietly. Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. They were all thinking the same thing. They were looking at something that didn't originate on Earth. "Get Washington on the line," Abigail finally said, "and make sure this feed isn't being recorded anywhere it shouldn't be." Within 24 hours, the site was swarming with military vessels, all operating under the guise of a training exercise. The president had been briefed, and a specialized team was assembled that included not just military personnel, but also scientists from various disciplines. The triangular object, now codenamed Poseidon, was about to become the most studied artifact in human history. Among those summoned was Dr. William Harrison, a renowned marine archaeologist with a specialty in deep-sea anomalies. At 65, he had spent more time underwater than most fish and had written the definitive text on underwater archaeological techniques. His weathered face bore the marks of decades of sun exposure, and his hands were permanently stained with the chemicals he'd worked with throughout his career. "Never seen anything like it," he muttered as he reviewed the initial footage. The structure appears to have been designed with hydrodynamics in mind, which suggests it was meant to move through water, or perhaps another fluid medium. Also on the team was Dr. Sofia Rodriguez, an astrobiology expert from NASA, and Rear Admiral James Cooper, who would oversee the military aspects of the operation. Cooper was a no-nonsense career officer with 30 years of service. His presence signified the gravity with which the government was treating the discovery. "Our first priority is containment," Cooper explained during the initial briefing. "No information leaves this room. As far as the world knows, we're conducting routine oceanographic research." "And the second priority?" asked Sophia, her keen eyes challenging the Admiral. "Determining whether this thing poses any threat to national security." "It's been down there for God knows how long," William interjected. "If it were dangerous, wouldn't we know by now?" Cooper's expression remained impassive. "That's what we're here to find out, Dr. Harrison." The operation was given an innocuous name, Project Deep Blue, and a cover story involving deep-sea mineral exploration was disseminated to the press. Meanwhile, the real work began with a series of increasingly sophisticated remote explorations of the object. High-resolution scans revealed that the triangular structure was approximately 350 feet across and appeared to have multiple levels inside. Most intriguingly, there were perfectly circular openings along its hull, each exactly 15 inches in diameter and arranged in geometric patterns that defied random distribution. "They're access points of some kind," suggested Sophia during one analysis session. "Or perhaps sensory apparatus. Or weapons," muttered Cooper. William rolled his eyes. "Always with the weapons, James. Not everything unknown is automatically a threat. In my experience, Dr. Harrison, unknown usually equals unpredictable, and unpredictable is just another word for dangerous." The bickering between military caution and scientific curiosity continued for days as more data poured in. The object's hull was composed of an unknown alloy that resisted all attempts at sampling. Remote scans couldn't penetrate more than a few feet into the structure, suggesting some kind of shielding technology. But perhaps the most baffling discovery came from the marine biologists on the team, who noted unusual behavior from the local dolphin population. Pods of dolphins were congregating around the ships, behaving in ways that defied known patterns. They seemed to be patrolling the area with organized swimming formations that some observers described as almost military. "It's as if they're guarding it," remarked Dr. Layla Jackson, the team's marine mammal specialist. "I've never seen cetaceans behave this way. They're maintaining a perimeter, communicating in ultrasonic frequencies we can barely detect with our equipment." Meanwhile, in Seattle, Washington, a 35-year-old oceanographer named Michael Cooper was teaching his undergraduate class about deep-sea trenches when his phone buzzed with a text message from an old college friend now working at the Pentagon. "They found something in the Atlantic, something big. Check your email." Michael's hands trembled slightly as he opened his inbox. Unlike his students, Michael had a personal connection to mysterious oceanic phenomena. His father, Captain Thomas Cooper, had disappeared in the Atlantic 30 years earlier while commanding a research vessel investigating unusual magnetic anomalies in the same region where the triangle had been discovered. The official report had concluded that the ship, the Horizon, had likely sunk in a sudden storm. But no wreckage was ever found, and young Michael had grown up obsessed with finding out what had really happened to his father and the crew of 23 who had vanished without a trace. The email contained only a heavily redacted document with a classified logo at the top and a brief note. "They're looking for experts. Your specialization in deep-sea magnetism puts you on the shortlist. If you're interested, say nothing to anyone and come to the attached coordinates for briefing." Michael cancelled his classes for the week, citing a family emergency, and was on a military transport plane within 24 hours. His heart raced with the possibility that after 3 decades he might finally discover what happened to his father. When he arrived at the floating research platform that had been established above the Poseidon site, Michael was immediately struck by the scale of the operation. Multiple vessels surrounded a central platform, and security was tight enough to make a presidential detail look casual. After passing through several checkpoints, he was led to a briefing room where Admiral Cooper was waiting. "Dr. Cooper," the Admiral said, extending his hand, "thank you for joining us on such short notice." "I came as soon as I could," Michael replied, his eyes darting to the screens displaying various angles of the triangular object. "That's why you're here," Cooper confirmed. "We believe it may be connected to several mysterious disappearances in this region over the past century, including, potentially, the Horizon incident." Michael's breath caught in his throat. "My father's ship." Cooper nodded solemnly. "We've reviewed the data from that expedition. The magnetic anomalies they were investigating match what we're seeing now, only much stronger. We think whatever affected the Horizon 30 years ago is related to this object." "I want to see everything you have," Michael said firmly, "in due time. First, I need to know if you're prepared to compartmentalize your personal connection to this. We need your expertise, but not if it clouds your judgment." Michael met the Admiral's gaze steadily. "Admiral Cooper, I've spent my entire adult life searching for answers. I'm not about to jeopardize the best chance I've ever had by acting impulsively." Cooper studied him for a moment before nodding. "Fair enough. Welcome to Project Deep Blue." Over the next few days, Michael was brought up to speed on all aspects of the discovery. He worked closely with the scientific team, particularly with Doctors Harrison, Rodriguez, and Jackson. His expertise in oceanic magnetic phenomena proved invaluable as they mapped the unusual energy fields emanating from the triangular object. "The pattern isn't random," Michael explained during one briefing, pointing to a complex visualization he had created. "It pulses in regular intervals, exactly 108 minutes apart. And look here," he highlighted a particular data set. "During each pulse, the magnetic field weakens just enough that our instruments can partially penetrate the hull." "So we have a window," Sophia concluded. "A brief opportunity to see inside." "Exactly, but we need better equipment than what we currently have deployed." Admiral Cooper frowned. "What are you suggesting, Dr. Cooper?" "I'm suggesting we need to get closer, much closer. We need a manned submersible with specialized shielding against the magnetic pulses." "Out of the question," Cooper said immediately. "We don't know enough about the risks." "With all due respect, Admiral," Michael countered, "remote exploration has taken us as far as it can. If we want answers, someone needs to go down there." The debate raged for hours, with the scientific team largely backing Michael's proposal, while military personnel sided with Cooper's caution. Eventually, a compromise was reached. A specially modified deep-sea submersible would be prepared, but would only approach the object, not attempt to enter it. As preparations for the manned mission began, the dolphin activity around the site intensified. Dr. Jackson spent hours each day observing and recording their behavior. "They're trying to communicate with us," she insisted during a team meeting. "The patterns in their vocalizations are too complex to be natural. It's almost like a mathematical sequence." "You're suggesting the dolphins are intelligent enough for mathematical communication?" Admiral Cooper asked skeptically. "I'm suggesting that something has enhanced their natural abilities," Layla replied firmly, "and I believe it's connected to that object down there." Meanwhile, William had been analyzing historical reports of maritime incidents in the region and made a startling discovery. "There's a pattern," he announced, spreading out a map marked with dozens of red dots. Every disappearance, every report of unusual phenomena, they all occur in a perfect geometric arrangement around the location of our triangle. And they date back centuries, from the early colonial period to my friend Thomas Cooper's expedition 30 years ago. Michael's head snapped up at the mention of his father. "You knew my father?" William's eyes softened. "Indeed I did, son. We were colleagues at the Oceanographic Institute before I moved to field research. He was a brilliant man, and cautious too. Whatever happened to the horizon wasn't due to recklessness, I can tell you that much." Michael swallowed hard. "Thank you. That means a lot." As the day for the submersible mission approached, tensions on the platform increased. The specialized craft, named the Venture, had been equipped with every sensor known to science and reinforced against the magnetic anomalies. It would carry a crew of 3, Michael as the scientific lead, Lieutenant Olivia Blackwood as pilot, and Dr. Harrison for his archaeological expertise. The night before the mission, Michael couldn't sleep. He stood on the deck of the platform, staring out at the dark water where, 900 feet below, lay the answers he had sought for most of his life. He was so lost in thought that he didn't notice Sophia approaching until she was beside him. "Nervous about tomorrow?" she asked quietly. Michael smiled wryly. "Terrified, but not enough to back out. That's the definition of courage, I think. Being afraid but doing it anyway." They stood in companionable silence for a moment before Sophia spoke again. "There's something I haven't told the others yet. I wanted to confirm my analysis first." Michael turned to look at her. "What is it? The alloy in that triangle? I've been comparing it to every known material in our databases. The closest match, and it's not very close, is a theoretical composite that NASA engineers designed for interstellar travel. A material that could withstand the stresses of traveling at relativistic speeds. You're saying it's a spacecraft. I'm saying it's definitely not from around here, and wherever it came from, it traveled a very long way to get here." The implications hung between them in the night air. If Sophia was right, humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and hadn't been for some time. The following morning, the Venture was prepared for its historic descent. The submersible looked like a futuristic beetle, its reinforced hull gleaming under the morning sun. The launch procedure went smoothly, and soon Michael, William, and Lieutenant Blackwood were descending into the depths. "Passing 400 feet, Olivia reported calmly. "All systems nominal. Magnetic field strength increasing, but within expected parameters," added Michael, monitoring his specialized equipment. William, despite his decades of underwater experience, couldn't help but press his face to one of the small viewports like an excited child. "Just think, we might be the first humans to make direct contact with an extraterrestrial artifact. Puts my lifetime of shipwrecks in perspective." As they approached the 900-foot mark, the water around them began to take on an unusual quality, a faint luminescence that seemed to emanate from no particular source. "Are you seeing this?" Michael asked, pointing to the ghostly blue glow. "Bioluminescent organisms, perhaps," suggested William, though he didn't sound convinced. "No known species creates this effect," Michael replied. "And look, it's getting stronger as we get closer to the triangle." Suddenly, their communications with the surface crackled with interference. "This. Cooper, we're in unusual activity. Proceed. Caution." We're losing them," Olivia noted, adjusting controls to compensate. "And the magnetic readings are spiking. We're entering an active phase earlier than predicted." "We need to back off," William said firmly. "Return to a safe distance until the phase passes." Michael hesitated, staring at the readings. "Wait, look at the pattern. It's different this time. The pulses are shorter, more frequent. It's almost as if—" "As if what?" prompted William. "As if it's reacting to our presence. As if it knows we're here." Before either of his companions could respond, a school of dolphins appeared in their external lights, swimming in tight formation directly toward the submersible. "What in the world?" Olivia murmured. The dolphins surrounded the Venture, their movements so synchronized they seemed to be moving as a single organism. Then, unexpectedly, they began to guide the submersible, nudging it gently but unmistakably toward the triangular object. "They want us to follow them," William realized. "Or they're trying to push us away from danger," countered Olivia. "No," Michael said with strange certainty. "They're guiding us. They've been guarding this thing for decades, maybe centuries, and now they're inviting us in." The lead dolphin, a massive male with distinctive scarring on his dorsal fin, swam directly in front of the Venture's main viewport, staring in at the human occupants with an intelligence that sent shivers down their spines. Then it made a deliberate motion with its head, indicating they should continue forward. "This is unprecedented," William whispered, his scientific mind struggling to process what his eyes were seeing. "Cetacean behavior like this simply doesn't exist in the literature." "Do we follow?" Olivia asked, her hands hovering over the controls. Michael took a deep breath. "Yes, but maintain minimum safe distance from the triangle itself." As they approached the massive structure, details became clearer through the strange blue luminescence. The surface wasn't simply covered in marine growth as they had initially thought. The growth had formed in specific patterns, following underlying structures in the hull itself. It was as if the ocean life had been deliberately cultivated to hide the true nature of the object. "Look at those circular openings," William pointed. "They're arranged in a pattern that reminds me of ancient astronomical charts, like they're mapping constellations." Michael was about to respond when a pulse of energy emanated from the triangle, washing over the submersible in a wave that momentarily disrupted all their systems. When the equipment came back online, something had changed. The circular openings were glowing with a soft amber light. "It's activating," Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper. Suddenly, their sonar picked up movement from within the triangle. Something was emerging from one of the larger openings, something that moved with purpose through the water. "We should retreat," Olivia suggested, tension evident in her voice. "No," Michael replied, his eyes fixed on the approaching shape. "We came for answers. I'm not leaving without them." The object emerged fully into their lights, a smaller triangular craft, perhaps 30 feet across, with the same construction as the larger structure. It moved through the water with impossible grace, coming to a stop directly in front of the Venture. "It's a scout craft," William breathed, "a smaller vessel from the mothership." The dolphins had moved aside to allow the smaller triangle to approach, but they remained in a protective formation around both vessels. The scout craft emitted a series of pulses that the submersible's sensors registered as complex electromagnetic patterns. "It's scanning us," Michael realized. "Or communicating?" In response to the pulses, the dolphins began emitting high-frequency clicks and whistles in patterns that seemed to mirror the triangle's emissions. "They're translating," William said in awe. "The dolphins are acting as intermediaries." For several minutes this bizarre three-way interaction continued, the triangle pulsing, the dolphins responding, and the humans watching in stunned silence. Then abruptly the scout craft moved closer and extended what appeared to be a docking mechanism toward the Venture. "It wants us to connect," Michael said. "That's insane," Olivia protested. "We have no idea what will happen if we do." "I've spent my entire life searching for what happened to my father," Michael replied quietly. "His last communication mentioned seeing something in the water, something that shouldn't exist. I think this is what he saw. I think this is what took the horizon." After a tense discussion, they made the decision to allow the connection. The scout craft's docking mechanism attached to the Venture's research bay, forming a sealed passage between the two vessels. "Atmosphere readings in the connecting tube show breathable air," Olivia reported, surprised. "Slightly higher oxygen content than Earth normal, but nothing dangerous. They've adapted their environment for us," William noted. "They're expecting visitors, or they've had them before." Michael suited up in a lightweight diving suit as a precaution. I'm going across. The rest of you stay here." "Not a chance," William retorted. "I'm coming with you. These old bones still have one great adventure left in them." After ensuring Olivia had emergency protocols in place, the two scientists entered the connecting tube. The passage was short, but felt like crossing a threshold into another reality. At the end, they encountered what appeared to be an airlock of alien design. William studied the mechanism. Intuitive design. "I think this symbol here means open." He pressed the indicated panel, and the airlock cycled with a soft hiss. When the inner door opened, they stepped into a chamber unlike anything human eyes had seen before. The interior of the scout craft was a single room with walls that seemed to shift between solid and translucent. Symbols glowed along curved surfaces, and in the center was what appeared to be a control console designed for beings with very different proportions than humans. "It's beautiful," William murmured, taking careful steps into the chamber. As they moved further in, the door sealed behind them, and the entire craft began to move. Displays activated around them, showing their position relative to the larger triangle and the ocean floor. "We're being taken inside the mothership," Michael realized, watching as the scout craft maneuvered toward one of the larger openings in the main structure. The journey was brief. When the scout craft docked and its door reopened, they found themselves in a vast chamber within the triangular mothership. The space was illuminated by the same ethereal blue glow they had observed in the surrounding water, and the architecture defied earthly conventions. Curves blending seamlessly with sharp angles, surfaces that appeared solid from one angle and transparent from another. "Look at that!" William pointed to what appeared to be a timeline inscribed along one wall, filled with symbols and images depicting Earth through various historical periods. "They've been watching us for centuries." Michael's attention, however, was drawn to another chamber visible through a translucent wall. Inside were preserved artifacts, human artifacts, including what appeared to be pieces of ships and aircraft that had disappeared in this region over the decades. And there, prominently displayed in a special alcove, was the nameplate from the research vessel Horizon. "Dad's ship," Michael whispered, moving toward it as if in a trance. "They did take it. William placed a comforting hand on Michael's shoulder. But why preserve these artifacts? What were they studying? Before Michael could respond, a section of the floor began to illuminate, and a holographic display activated in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth, then zoomed in on the ocean where they now stood. A representation of the triangular mothership appeared, then hundreds more like it, scattered across Earth's oceans. "They're everywhere," William gasped. "Hidden in every ocean." The display shifted to show strange beings, not quite humanoid, with elongated features and an almost aquatic quality to their form. The beings were interacting with primitive dolphins, then with more evolved ones over what appeared to represent millions of years. "They've been guiding dolphin evolution," Michael realized, "creating a species that could serve as intermediaries between them and us." The final image in the sequence showed humans and the aliens working together, with dolphins as facilitators of communication. It was a vision of cooperation, not conquest. As the hologram faded, a new door opened, revealing a chamber they hadn't noticed before. Inside was a preservation pod of some kind, and within it was a human figure, an older man in the uniform of a research vessel captain. "Dad," Michael whispered, stumbling forward. The preservation pod was sophisticated technology beyond human understanding, but its purpose was clear. Captain Thomas Cooper was being kept in suspended animation, perfectly preserved as he had been 30 years earlier. "He's alive," William confirmed, checking the monitoring systems that were designed to be comprehensible to humans. "Perfectly preserved. They've been keeping him safe all this time." "But why?" Michael asked, his voice breaking with emotion. "Why take him? Why keep him?" Another holographic display activated, showing Captain Cooper's ship encountering the Triangle 3 decades earlier. Unlike the Venture, the Horizon had not been prepared for the magnetic anomalies, and systems had failed catastrophically. The aliens had saved the captain, but had been unable to save the rest of the crew. They couldn't communicate with him effectively, William interpreted from the images. So they kept him preserved until they could develop better methods of communication, through the dolphins and through their understanding of our technology. The display showed one final image. Captain Cooper, awake and healthy, reunited with his son, and then both of them serving as ambassadors between humanity and the alien presence that had been quietly observing Earth for millennia. They want to make first contact, Michael realized. And they want me, to help facilitate it. The question is, William said gravely, are we ready for what that means? Is humanity prepared to learn we're not alone and never have been? As if in answer, the preservation pod began a sequence that appeared to be an awakening protocol. Captain Thomas Cooper, lost for 30 years, was about to open his eyes to a world forever changed, and to the son who had never stopped searching for him. Michael stood transfixed, watching his father's eyelids flutter. I think we're about to find out. Admiral Cooper paced the deck of the research platform, checking his watch for the 5th time in as many minutes. They've been down there for 3 hours with minimal communication. I'm preparing a rescue operation. Sophia and Layla exchanged concerned glances. The magnetic interference makes consistent communication impossible, Sophia reminded him. And they did report they were safe approximately 30 minutes ago. A lot can happen in 30 minutes, the Admiral muttered. Suddenly the communications officer called out, Surface activity, sir. Something's coming up, and it's not the Venture. All eyes turned to the water as the surface began to glow with the same ethereal blue light that Michael had reported seeing at depth. Then breaking through the waves with impossible grace came the alien scout craft, its triangular form now fully visible in daylight. Security personnel immediately moved into defensive positions, weapons trained on the emerging craft. Hold your fire! Admiral Cooper ordered sharply. Nobody shoots unless I give the explicit command. The scout craft hovered just above the water's surface, water streaming from its gleaming hull. Then, with precision that spoke of advanced technology, it settled gently onto the platform's landing pad, a space designed for helicopters, not alien vessels. For a long moment, nothing happened. The assembled military and scientific personnel stared at the triangular craft, its surface now pulsing with subtle lights in patterns that somehow seemed meaningful, yet incomprehensible. Then a seam appeared in its previously smooth hull, widening into a doorway. Silhouetted against the bright interior stood 3 figures, 2 in diving suits and 1 in a captain's uniform that hadn't been worn in 30 years. Michael stepped out first, his face a complex mixture of joy and awe. Admiral Cooper, he called out, his voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. I'd like to introduce you to my father, Captain Thomas Cooper. The older Cooper emerged, blinking in the sunlight, his first in 3 decades. Though preserved in perfect health by alien technology, his eyes held the wisdom and weariness of someone who had glimpsed beyond the veil of human understanding. Admiral Cooper stepped forward, professionalism momentarily overcoming shock. Captain Cooper, welcome back to the world. Thomas nodded solemnly. Admiral, we don't have much time. They're ready to speak with humanity's leaders, but they need assurances. They've been watching us for a very long time, waiting for the right moment. They? The Admiral asked, though the answer was obvious when the 3rd figure emerged from the scout craft. It wasn't William Harrison as everyone expected. Instead, a being of clearly non-human origin stepped onto the platform. Taller than an average human, with elongated limbs and features that suggested both aquatic and terrestrial adaptation, the alien moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost choreographed. Everyone on the platform froze. Security personnel with their fingers near triggers, scientists with their mouths agape, Admiral Cooper with his hand half raised in what might have been a greeting or a warning. The alien raised its own hand, 6 elongated digits spread in what was unmistakably a peaceful gesture. Then it spoke, not with sounds, but somehow directly into the minds of everyone present. "We have waited long enough. You are ready now." As these words resonated in their consciousness, the surface of the ocean around the platform began to churn. Dozens, then hundreds of dolphins emerged, leaping and calling in coordinated patterns. And behind them, rising from the depths like ancient leviathans awakening, came more triangular ships. First 1, then 3, then 7, until the horizon was dotted with them. Captain Thomas Cooper turned to his son, a sad smile playing on his lips. "I told you I'd be back, Mikey. I just took the scenic route." Michael laughed through tears. "Only 30 years late, Dad. Not bad for interstellar navigation." And as humanity stood on the precipice of its greatest revelation, that we had never been alone, that visitors from beyond the stars had been our silent guardians for millennia, father and son embraced, bridging the decades of separation with a love that transcended even the miracle unfolding around them. In Washington, the president was being briefed on the rapidly unfolding situation. In New York, strange readings had news stations speculating about unusual oceanic phenomena. And in every sea on Earth, more triangular vessels were rising, their time of concealment finally at an end. The dolphins, evolutionary partners to both humans and aliens, continued their joyful dance around the ships, celebrating the convergence of 3 intelligent species that would forever change the course of life on Earth and beyond. William Harrison, emerging at last from the scout craft with notebooks full of hasty sketches and observations, summed it up best as he surveyed the historic scene. "Well, I do believe this will make a rather interesting footnote in the next edition of my textbook." Admiral Cooper could only shake his head. "I believe, Dr. Harrison, you may need to write an entirely new book." The first official interspecies summit was scheduled for the following week at the United Nations. The aliens, who called themselves the Valyrans, had requested that dolphins be present as both cultural ambassadors and translators. It was a request that confounded UN officials until Captain Cooper explained that dolphin vocalization, when properly interpreted through Valoran technology, created a bridge between the vastly different neural patterns of humans and Valorans. Michael found himself thrust into the role of humanity's primary contact, along with his father. Together, they began the monumental task of explaining to world leaders that Earth had been a protected outpost of the Valyran network for millennia, a developing world under discreet observation until its dominant species reached sufficient technological and ethical advancement for formal contact. "They could have conquered us at any time," Thomas explained during a preparatory briefing, "but that's not their way. The Valyrans are explorers and preservationists. They maintain outposts on thousands of developing worlds, guiding evolution toward intelligence without interfering directly. Except when they abducted you and your ship," one skeptical general pointed out. Thomas shook his head. "They didn't abduct us. They saved me, the only one they could reach in time when our ship was sinking. They've been trying to figure out how to safely return me ever since, while learning enough about human physiology and psychology to make direct contact possible." Michael watched his father with undisguised admiration. Despite 3 decades in alien preservation, Thomas Cooper had adapted to his new reality with remarkable resilience. There were adjustments, of course, technological advances to catch up on, cultural shifts to understand, and the painful realization that his wife had died, believing him lost at sea. But he had gained something precious. Few humans ever would: a comprehensive understanding of an advanced alien civilization and its place in the cosmos. As preparations for the UN summit continued, Michael, Thomas, and William worked tirelessly to compile everything they had learned about the Valyrans into accessible briefing materials. Sophia focused on their technology, while Layla continued her groundbreaking work on dolphin communication. Admiral Cooper to everyone's surprise, became one of the strongest advocates for peaceful engagement. "I've spent my career defending against threats," he explained when Michael questioned this shift. "I know a threat when I see one. These beings could have destroyed us any time in the last 10,000 years. Instead, they waited patiently for us to grow up. That deserves respect." The night before they were to depart for New York, Michael found his father standing on the deck of the research platform, gazing up at the stars. "Thinking about home?" Michael asked, joining him at the railing. Thomas smiled. "Which one? I've had several over the years. Did you ever lose hope that you'd see Earth again? See me?" Thomas was quiet for a long moment. "There were dark times," he finally admitted. "The Valyrans did their best to keep me comfortable, but the isolation was challenging. What kept me going was knowing they were learning from me, learning how to eventually approach humanity without causing panic, and knowing that someday, somehow, you'd find answers about what happened to me. I never stopped looking," Michael said softly. "Mom thought I was obsessed. Maybe I was. Your mother was an extraordinary woman. She would have handled all this." Thomas gestured to the alien ships illuminating the night sea with remarkable grace. "She would have had questions, so many questions." Thomas laughed. "Endless questions. The Valyrans wouldn't have known what hit them." They stood in companionable silence for a while, until Thomas spoke again. "They're going to offer us knowledge, Michael. Technology, medicine, history, gifts beyond imagination. But they're also going to ask something of us. What could we possibly offer them? Partnership. The Valyrans aren't conquerors, but they aren't purely altruistic either. They're looking for allies in something much bigger than us, a cosmic community of intelligent species working together for mutual preservation." "Preservation against what?" Thomas turned to face his son, his expression grave. "The universe is older and stranger than we ever imagined, Michael, and not everything out there is friendly. The Valyrans have enemies, ancient rivals with very different ideas about how developing worlds should be treated." Michael felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. "So this isn't just first contact, it's recruitment, in a manner of speaking. But it's our choice. They're adamant about that. Unlike their adversaries, they believe advanced species should choose their own path. And if we choose not to join them, they'll respect our decision, but they'll withdraw their protection." The implications were staggering. Humanity, which had believed itself alone in the cosmos, was about to discover it had been under the protected care of an advanced civilization, and that protection could be withdrawn. "We need to tell the others," Michael said. Thomas nodded. "Tomorrow, at the final briefing. They deserve to know exactly what's at stake before we meet with world leaders." As father and son returned inside, neither noticed the massive shape moving beneath the dark waters, a Valyran bioconstruct larger than a blue whale, one of many guardian entities that had patrolled Earth's oceans for centuries, keeping watch for threats both terrestrial and otherwise. The UN summit would change human history forever. But it would also place an enormous responsibility on a species that had only recently stopped fighting world wars and was still struggling with basic planetary stewardship. Whether humanity was truly ready for this cosmic invitation remained to be seen. But as Michael Cooper lay awake that night, contemplating the journey that had led him from a bereaved child to humanity's ambassador to the stars, he felt something he hadn't experienced since losing his father 30 years ago. Hope. Not just hope for himself or his reunited family, but hope for his entire species. The universe was bigger, more complex, and more wondrous than anyone had imagined, and despite all their flaws and stumbles, humans had been deemed worthy of invitation to its grandest table. Tomorrow would bring challenges beyond imagination. But tonight, beneath stars now known to house friends as well as mysteries, Michael Cooper slept soundly for the first time in decades. And in the waters below, the dolphins sang their ancient songs, songs now understood to be much more than animal vocalizations. They were the continuing record of Earth's secret history, preserved by gentle guardians who had walked the line between observation and interference since before humans built their first cities. The truth about the Bermuda Triangle and dozens of other maritime mysteries was finally coming to light. And with it, humanity's cosmic adolescence was coming to an end. A new chapter was beginning, not just for the Cooper family, but for every living being on planet Earth. William Harrison, in his cabin nearby, finished the first chapter of what would indeed become an entirely new book. The day humans realized they were not alone in the universe was not marked by fear or conquest, but by the quiet reunion of a father and son who had been separated by the very forces that would now unite us all. If there is a lesson in this extraordinary moment of contact, perhaps it is this. Even across the unfathomable gulfs of space and understanding, it is our connections to each other that truly matter. The Valyrans, with all their advanced technology and cosmic perspective, recognized this truth. They waited until we could understand not just their existence, but their purpose, to connect, to preserve, to expand the community of consciousness across a universe too vast and wonderful for any species to face alone. It seemed a fitting beginning to the greatest story ever told, one that would continue unfolding for generations to come.